Hi, Jen, the Holistic Health Boss here, your functional diagnostic health coach and personal training expert. And this week I am carrying on the conversation about autoimmunity. First off, I would like to say a big thank you to all of you who responded in support to my email last week as I shared my personal story around being diagnosed with Hashimoto's, and also for those of you who responded with a lot of questions about how you can help yourself or others dealing with certain health issues and particularly autoimmunity. So this week I'm carrying on the conversation because there were a lot of you with questions around autoimmunity, such as how do I know if I have an autoimmune disorder? What can I do to prevent it? And how do I test for it? And what puts me at risk for it? So this week I definitely want to talk about all of those things basically to answer your questions, because some of the statistics around autoimmunity are actually quite alarming. The American Autoimmune Related Disease Association basically estimates that about 50 million Americans have an autoimmune disorder, and most of them don't even know it because it's often going overlooked or misdiagnosed. In functional medicine, we talk about autoimmunity a lot, but it takes on average 18 years for new research and information to hit mainstream medicine. So there's this lag that is happening. And autoimmunity is actually more prevalent in women, likely because we have more estrogen in our body, and that's certainly one of the factors. High estrogen can be a factor in risk for autoimmunity. So just to give you a glimpse, for example, for every one male, they say that 10 women will develop Hashimoto's thyroiditis. And for every one male, 9 women will develop lupus. And for every one male, 7 women would develop potentially Graves' disease, another type of autoimmune. Now, this is becoming an epidemic, and like I talked about last week, there are certain things that have to be in place in order for you to have an autoimmune disorder. So one is that you have to have the gene for it. 2 is that you have to have leaky gut, and 3 is that there has to be some type of environmental factors such as gluten or toxins that actually trigger the gene to express itself and for autoimmunity to show up in the body. It kind of is this cascader effect that happens when we encounter these triggers. Then our body becomes overwhelmed with inflammation and it doesn't know how to differentiate between the bad guys and the good guys, and it starts attacking healthy tissues. Now I want to read you a quote from Virginia Ladd, who's the president of the AARDA, so that's the American Autoimmune Related Disease Association. And she said that in 2012, she explained that the rapid increase in autoimmune disease, it clearly suggests that environmental factors are at play due to the significant increase in these diseases. Genes do not change this fast. So in terms of the question about how do I prevent this or how can I manage it better, environmental triggers play a huge role in this. So environmental toxins, they basically can mimic estrogen in the body, and they create a lot of inflammation. And so when you have high estrogen and a lot of inflammation, the immune system becomes overwhelmed. And eventually it becomes so overwhelmed that it cannot distinguish between the bad guys and your healthy tissue, and it just starts attacking everything. Now, gluten is one of the specific environmental triggers that is a huge factor, because gluten is found in so many food products that we don't even realize. And most of us are eating gluten, or a lot of us might be eating gluten, and we don't really realize how toxic that it is. But in fact, gluten, the structure of gluten, it almost exactly resembles our thyroid tissue. So when we're consuming a lot of gluten, we have leaky gut and we have the gene for autoimmune. Then our immune system becomes confused and it can't distinguish the difference between recognizing a toxin like gluten in our diet and our thyroid tissue, and it starts to attack thyroid. So prevention, the first thing that you can do is start to take a look at your food intake and also your environmental toxins. These are 2 of the huge things that put you at risk. So you can go through your house and start cleaning up the environmental toxins, where you can control your environment a little bit more. You can swap out your cleaning products for environmentally friendly, non-toxic products. Same thing with your personal care, your lotions, your shampoo, your deodorants, the soap that you use. You can also get a HEPA air filter for your office and for your home. Research shows that actually the air in your home is more toxic for you than the air outside, and we spend most of our time indoors, and especially if we have windows and doors that are closed all of the time. That can be a really key preventative measure to prevent autoimmune or to actually manage it better. And then certainly diet is another place that you have control. So knowing that gluten is a huge factor for triggering autoimmunity, if you want to prevent it or manage it better, you can start cutting things like gluten out of your diet and also other inflammatory foods such as dairy and soy and alcohol and sugar. And even going extreme to an autoimmune paleo diet can really help for those of you who already know that you have autoimmune, or if you know that you're high risk for autoimmune. Another big factor in terms of a trigger is what I call gut invaders. And you guys have probably heard me talk about this before, but specifically gut invaders before, but let's talk about how they're autoimmune triggers. So certain bacteria, yeast, and parasites, there's actually a category in the stool sample test that I run that say autoimmune triggers. There's some that aren't, and there's some that are specifically. So Klebsiella, for example, is a type of bacteria that is an autoimmune trigger. So you can be checking your gut by running a stool sample test on a regular basis. I recommend my clients do one at least once a year to see if you have any of these gut invader autoimmune triggers. And then the other part about these gut invaders is what they do is they contribute to leaky gut. So as gross as it sounds to think about this, they're gut bugs and they produce their own waste or byproduct. So gut bug poo essentially. And this is what becomes really toxic inside of our system, which contributes to leaky gut, leads to more inflammation, and suppresses our immune system so that we can't fight off other viruses or things that might be triggering autoimmunity or leaky gut as well. So those are the three top big triggers: environmental toxins, processed and inflammatory foods, and then gut invaders. And those are also things that you can work on for prevention. Now, how do you go about testing for it? So the first thing, kind of indicator, I'll give you two things that are cheap and easy basically to look for. One is if you have a lot of ailments or sicknesses that won't go away. So maybe you're receiving specific treatments for them, medications, and they continue to get worse over time or the medications stop working, then that means that there's a high likelihood that you might have an autoimmune disorder as well because the problem is not being resolved. Also taking some of those medications, over-the-counter medications or prescriptions, they can contribute to leaky gut as well, which we know is one of the factors for autoimmunity. So that's an indication if you have health issues and ailments that have gotten worse over time or just won't go away, would be something to measure by. And then also another thing that you can do that's really cheap and easy is check your family history, because you do have to have the gene for it. So you can start asking around in your family if anybody has had thyroid issues, rheumatoid arthritis, lupus, Crohn's disease, celiac, and even if these people have not been diagnosed with an autoimmune disease, you want to look for just patterns in family history. Like maybe every woman in your mom's side of the family practically has had some type of thyroid disorder like hypo or hyperthyroidism, but they haven't actually been diagnosed with autoimmunity. Well, because we know the autoimmune diagnosis goes overlooked or is misdiagnosed, that can be an indication that maybe there is autoimmune in your family and it's just been overlooked, so you want to get yourself checked. So noticing any patterns in family history that might be setting you up for chronic disease, essentially. And then, of course, you can go the route of doing specific lab tests. So there are specific lab tests, like Cyrex has actually a specific, I think it's an Asray 5 test, that it's a blood test that you can do, and it actually looks at all the different tissues of the body, and it can predict autoimmune disease 10 years before it actually presents itself in the body, which is kind of cool. And whenever you're running any type of autoimmune test, basically what you're looking for are antibodies. So whenever our body is under attack or that encounters toxins, it produces antibodies. So if you are questioning if you have a thyroid autoimmune disorder like Graves' disease or Hashimoto's, you want to be looking for antibodies of the thyroid specifically, and that would confirm or deny basically autoimmune disease. So you can do some lab tests. The best place to get these lab tests run is probably through a functional medicine doctor, a naturopath, or a functional health coach, such as myself, because like I said, mainstream medicine is not really onto this stuff yet. And then of course there's prevention. So I already touched a little bit about prevention, decreasing your exposure to environmental toxins, eating an anti-inflammatory diet, actually supporting the detoxification system. So showing your liver some love can be really helpful in flushing out toxins that you have accumulated. And then of course, making sure that you're getting good quality sleep so that your body can restore itself. Exercise, which also helps to promote the natural detoxification process. And then working with a health practitioner to find specific targeted supplements that are right for your body to support maybe the areas that you need most, whether that's in healing leaky gut or digestion or sleep or whatever it is that you might need specifically. So I hope you guys found this helpful and informative. If you're interested in learning more about your risk or how to prevent or how to test for autoimmune disease, I invite you guys to schedule a complimentary Ideal Health and Weight Discovery call with me by clicking on the link below or hopping back to the email where you might have received this to do that, and we can set up a call for 45 minutes to talk about your risk prevention and how to test. So hope you guys have a great week, and I'll talk to you next Thursday.